And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here, back with another off-season supporter series chat. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting closer and closer to that lovely time of year, and that is regular season for the AFL and some of the state leagues. You guys know that I cover that. So I thought, let's do something fun over the off season. So I reached out to some people and some friends to find some supporters of the clubs of the AFL that are non-Aussies, Americans, or international. And joining me today from the state just north of me, lovely Minnesota, I have Isaac joining me. Isaac, great to meet you and have you on the podcast, sir.
Hey, Donnie, Coach Donnie. Nice to have myself here. I think I watched one of your episodes before and sounds like a lot of fun. And thank you for having me.
Well, I cannot wait. I know that we have quite the fun relationship with the Minnesota Freeze. I even see the Minnesota Freeze footy in the background, so I think it's fun to always sit down and have a chat. So let's go to it. Before we get into the footy part of the podcast, which I know most people are on it, just a little bit about yourself outside of the game of football.
Isaac Mena. I've been living in Minnesota about 10 to, no, 15 years now. Time flies. I always remember the day I moved here was right after the dome collapsed with all the snow,
Hmm.
the Metro Dome. So I always can just go back and look up when I moved based on that. So I grew up in India, but came to Chicago for school. And after graduating, I moved around New York, Ohio, San Francisco, and then finally, in the last 15 years, I've been kind of stuck here in Minnesota. Met a local girl here and married, so I guess my car wouldn't start, so I'm not going anywhere.
Hey, you're not the only one. I know a few Australians that I've talked to that found some local girls and it's hard for them to get away. So I love the story. That is fantastic. So let's jump right into it, sir. As somebody that's over here in the States and being originally from India, I cannot wait to hear this. What is your finding footy story?
It's rather I'm really glad I found footy, by the way. It was like kind of coincidence. Once I came to Minnesota, I was just looking for something to do. I always played a little soccer and other sports, and I somehow got myself into some Gaelic football. So there was a club
Mhm.
here, Twin Cities Lakelanders, and I played Gaelic football with them for about a year in 2011. And some of the mates there were also footy players. So they kind of told me, hey, why don't you come try this out? We are the Minnesota Freeze. Zach Weaver and Danny Hansen and a couple other guys. They got me into it. I showed up for my first practice, not knowing what to expect. I looked up what should I wear? Okay, just wear a t-shirt and a shorts. However, it was like, late April, it was still almost 35 degrees. And I show up and PD, our club legend, he welcomed me and said, oh, you're gonna be a man among boys today because everybody's bundled up. I thought I shouldn't. So I've been playing ever since. That year, the club won a national championship, and Iowa won, Chicago won. That was a good year, 2012.
Mhm.
Ever since, I've been playing, watching, following footy, and yeah, like I'm preaching to the choir here, but it is the greatest sport on earth.
Mhm. It is hard to argue. I absolutely love it. You gotta be nuts to do a podcast about a sport 12,000 kilometers away, but that's how much I love it. So absolutely love meeting somebody that loves the sport just as much. So I gotta ask, sir, favorite part about the sport of football?
Um, what I like about it is there's a spot for almost everybody on the team. We see these tall timbers, right? 6'8", big tall fellas at rock or and at key forward or something like that. And then you see we had one of our guys, Ninja, who's
Mhm.
short, tiny, and everybody has a position to play. Everybody can play, and I think I love that, and all the running and athleticism and all these different skills that you need to bring in together for a full body sport like this. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, 100%. It is one of those. I tell a lot of people, I said, doesn't matter what your fitness is, we can find somewhere for you to play in footy, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So again, you have that pleasure that very few actually have, and you've actually played this sport. So I'm actually going to change this question just the tiniest bit and go, what's your favorite part about playing the sport of football?
Um, playing, I think the fast pace and the scoring moments and all of that, that's the good, the flashy side of playing footy.
Mhm.
But I've always been on the defensive on the back line. So for me, the favorite part of football is the ball get congested in the forward line and nobody knows what's gonna happen. If we somehow get it out wide or like, just clear it out of your 50, that is a huge thing. And uh, I I could I could I could do that over and over again. And I think the biggest marks, yeah, those always end up on TV and all of that. But when you're playing and when you're on the spoil, little tap out, one kick, one handball, and getting the ball out, that's my favorite part, I would say.
Those little things. And as somebody that's coached the game before, it's guys like you that I absolutely love because sometimes it's just the little stuff that gets stuff done. So I absolutely love that. So as you said, you got into it with the Minnesota Freeze through the Gaelic football. So I got to ask, how is it that you found the AFL?
Um, I think as soon as I started playing for the Freeze and people were talking about, hey, here's AFL, and started watching some games, and the coach at the time encouraged us to actually watch the game. For someone like me who came in just because I'm curious and I knew it existed and I may have
Mhm.
watched a few videos, but just watch a couple of full games just to get used to it. I think that's how we started watching it on the weekends and such, and got a little bit more to see how it is done in a professional level, right? There's one thing that how we at amateurs at, like you said, 12,000 kilometers away, play versus at the peak of the sport. How do they do it? I think that was really fantastic to
Yep.
watch.
Many of the guys down here at the Des Moines Roosters know I will tell them every single time I can, watch pro games, watch pro games, watch pro games. You will always learn more from watching the best of the best than you ever will at any practice. Trust me, they will teach you. And it was funny, the last podcast that I did with Jacob Gross from the Roosters, who's a huge Brisbane Lions supporter, said that, and it made me chuckle a little bit because I'm like, great. I'm like, the message is getting through. The guys are getting into the AFL because they're watching games. So it's absolutely fantastic. So the people that are watching the podcast know your club by the fantastic outfit that you were wearing for this podcast. That is absolutely magnificent. But for those that are listening to the podcast, who is your club in the AFL and why?
It is, of course, a Richmond Footy Club, Richmond Tigers. I Once I started watching, I did not immediately have a club to pick.
Hmm.
I asked most of the people on the club, and there are Aussies, non-Aussies, hey, who should I support? And almost everyone kind of deflected. I remember one of our favorite Adelaide supporters, Bartman, hey, who should I support? I'm expecting, oh, come
Hmm.
support the Crows. No, he said, oh, yeah, you can pick this new club, that new club, and all that.
Hmm.
Finally, the first person who told me that I should support a particular club was his name is Deep. He is with the AFL India,
Hmm.
and I just chatted with him, and he was saying that at that year there was an international program, and or right before that, I think Richmond sponsored the Indian team,
Oh, yes, I remember
and
that.
giving them whatever that was. I think they hosted them in Melbourne or something like that. So he said, okay, they are a good footy club, they're a good partner, you should support them. I was like, okay, I will do that. And needless to say, this is 2012, 2013. The bandwagon was fairly empty. There was not much of a wagon, if you will. Um, and I,
Hmm.
I and I and I picked that. And that being said, there were some good players.
Hmm.
I think that was a couple of years when Trent Cotchin was I think number two in the Brownlow, or I think he won the year later, something like that. I think
Mhm.
a couple of good players, but not really great as a team. So it was kind of fun to watch and go with that. Yeah.
So the one thing is they cannot say you were a bandwagon fan. You jumped on before they had their years of success. So that's fantastic to hear. So I can see the lovely Richmond hat and the scarf and all that. So I gotta ask, what was the first Richmond Tigers item that you were given or bought?
I think it is this jumper here. You will
Hmm.
see this is should be from that time. Kuga is it
Hmm.
was Kuga, then it was BLK, and now it's something else. But I think it's from that time. My brother lives in Australia, by the way. So he bought me this jumper when he came over here for my wedding in 2014. So something about that time. And since then, I've been buying or getting a few stuff. I have a jumper that is signed by the 2015 or 16 team. That time it was BLK, the sponsor or the kit manufacturer, and the Minnesota Freeze also had BLK as our kit. So they gave it for a silent auction, and I won it at any cost. I think we went paid like 300 bucks. Don't tell my wife about that, but 300 bucks or something like
I
that. I don't
love
know.
it.
But only having a handful of Richmond fans here, 300 bucks is not bad for such a good thing, right? And the latest is this scarf. I had a friend come over from Melbourne like a few weeks ago. His daughter plays in the AFLW for the Hawks. So he got me this. He was asking, "Hey, I should get you something. Do you need a hat?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, I already have it." But he said, "Okay, I'll get you a AFLW Richmond scarf." So
Mhm.
it is good to have some of these colors. That being said, in Minnesota, I'm not the most yellow and black guy. We have our
Mhm.
good friend Jory here. Head to toe, he's yellow and black. I don't know how he does it. He's got a yellow and black footy. He has. I'm sure his underwear is yellow and black. I don't know that for sure.
It's one of those if you cut him, he bleeds yellow and black. That is not. I
100%.
absolutely
He's
love it. That is fantastic, and the fact that AFLW scarf is even better for everybody that knows me. Again, huge supporter of the women's side on that one. So to see an AFLW scarf, that is magnificent. So we'll jump into it. You kind of, I love talking about this because I believe fandom is one of the most interesting things in the world because no matter where you are, fandom is different. Nobody fans exactly the same. There's not a single person in the world that fans exactly the same. So I love hearing this. Can you describe your fandom for me? Are you somebody that gets up and you watch the games as much as possible? Do you keep track of everything during the off season? Or is it when the season is on, you keep track of it, but it's not something that's going to rule your day?
I did not let the season rule my day this last season, so to speak. But I do follow. I think footy during the season. We are also playing football with the freeze. I think I see my mates every weekend. So whether you are intentionally paying attention or not, you are paying attention because people talk about it. Your team got beaten by another team, and then they'll give you a little bit when you get there on Saturday. Or and I do watch. I think I watched about a third of the games this season, and that's how it has always been. And once you get to the finals, I'll watch a little bit more. Um, a couple of things I do listen to a Tiger Talks footy podcast when I go for my walks and runs and things like that. So I pay attention to that through that and social media and stuff. But I cannot say I'm watching every game 100% and know every player and everything like that.
Mhm.
So if you ask me to name our 18, I can probably name 12 or thereabout. Less so this year because we lost like eight of them this
Mhm.
off season. So I'm still learning the names of all these new players that are coming in with the draft.
Mhm.
But pretty excited for what's coming.
I will tell you this. I'm excited because I think they've started the building blocks. I know it's not going to be easy, and we'll discuss this a little bit later. But the season was not exactly one to write home about. But the thing though is that I think what you brought in this draft, I think is going to help kickstart that a lot. So I'm super excited to keep track of the red and the yellow and black this particular season. So let's have some fun with this one. I always love asking this question because, as you said, you have a few years of supporting this club, and this isn't just a 2 or 3 year thing. So do you have a favorite player of the past that's donned the Tigers jumper, and a favorite player currently on the Tigers list?
I think if you ask most Richmond players, they might say Dusty Martin or Trent Cochin and folks like that. I started watching Trent Cochin. I think Dusty was still coming up. He was part of the team when I started following. But by far of my favorites have always been like the defenders, like the one that I'm being. So Alex Rance, my God, that 1 year, 2017, how good was he? He was dominating in the back line. It doesn't matter. You throw the best forwards in the AFL at him, and he knew how to push out. And there may be a little cheap shot or a cheap thing right there, but that's the
Mhm.
part and parcel of this doing business as a defenseman. So he was fantastic. Bachar Hooley was fantastic. I loved how he could get the ball out of the 50 just like anybody else. So these were some of my favorite ones. And of course, Jack Riewoldt, he never took himself too seriously. Maybe when he was younger, he did it a little bit more. But when he became an elder statesman, he was really fun to watch and see what he did. Currently, I want to say among the current players, maybe Vlastuin and Balta. Again, I'm going to go to the
Mhm.
defensive side. Morris Rioli. Rioli is, I think he plays up front a little bit, but the best part I like is his relentless tackling. All right,
Mhm.
he may drop the ball, give it away, but then he's chasing that guy down 100 meters and getting down. It's unbelievable how relentless, they call about the honey badger, like it's something like
Mhm.
that. Just I love all of those pieces.
Yep,
So let's
absolutely
see
love
how
it.
these new kids coming in are.
There's some good ones. There's some good ones. I'm excited to see this young group. You've got a few that I've kept track of the draft that I think could really have a chance to play day one, round one. It'd be fun to watch. But no, completely agree with you. Dylan Grimes is another one. I absolutely love him. I know being as a defender, you probably love that. He's just Mr. Reliable. I
Yeah.
just hope he can stay healthy. That's been his issue. Is he's his injury issues. Man, so many good ones. I love Morris Rioli. Just the fact that he's absolutely relentless. Absolutely agree with you on that one. So it's going to be fun watching this young Tiger side. So let's have some fun. We'll try to make as much positive as we can on this one. Your thoughts on this Richmond season again? Unfortunately, wooden spoon, number one overall pick, but there were still building blocks there. I mean, there were some wins that came out of nowhere, but there's some positivity in Tigerland after what was probably a very hard season for most of the Tiger Army.
I would say this. I see that jumper behind you, one of the jumpers there. I absolutely enjoyed beating Sydney this past year, right? It
I was
was
waiting for that.
fantastic. It was fantastic. And I kept telling everybody, hey, why are you all losing to Sydney here? It's easy. Tigers showed it. It was fairly easy there. Um, I think all the losses, but so much losses. I think that took a toll. It wasn't fun always. A few wins here and there that work. And I think once they kind of gave up on the season and find young players, giving them, we had a few more from the down the list that came up and played quite a bit. Whether they all worked out or not, I think it was good to see that happening. I think those are all like a moral victory, if you will. I think I'll take all of that.
Mhm.
And of course, the first pick in the draft. That cannot go wrong, along with all the other picks that came. I think It was a nonstop Richmond calling people in the draft. So let's see how that plays out. The
Yeah.
next year can only be better.
Yeah. There's a laundry list. Richmond was very active in the first round. It was definitely interesting to, like I said, to see all these youngsters grow up together. It'll be definitely fun. So we'll jump to it. As we said, we're getting closer and closer. I know the countdown has already started for so many accounts that we're under 50 days until the start of the season. So your thoughts on this upcoming year? Can Richmond jump up the ladder, or are you kind of expecting them, unfortunately, to kind of stay again towards the bottom of the ladder?
I would expect them to be a little bit more in the middle of the pack, mediocre. Um, I think a lot of these young bloods, and they're gonna play a little fearless footy. That is gonna bring them up a little bit higher than whether it is 18 or at the very bottom, and which is not the best thing to have, like as a club, right, in terms of draft picks or anything like that. But from improving and a growing group of players, you just mentioned there's a lot of young players who are going to grow up together. Because when you go back to 2012 and thereabouts, you had Trent Cotchin, then Dusty Martin joined. All of them grew up kind of together. I think it would be good for them to have a little bit of fun. May not be wooden spoon. I hope it's a few runs up and just kind of stay there.
Mhm.
I don't see them making the finals, to be honest, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those. Unfortunately, like I said, it's going to be a build. It's going to be a build, but I think, like I said, I think they've started off well. So let's have a little bit of fun here. I know over here in the States, it is a huge thing among sports media, and everybody talks that everybody thinks they can do the general manager spot better than the guy that's in the job. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun right now. I'm going to install you as the list manager for the Richmond Tigers for one day. You can sign one player from any of the other 17 teams to join the Tigers next season in that shot to maybe jump up the ladder. Who would you bring in to help out the Tigers next year and why?
Um, I am kind of okay with having our group. However, I think if I had to pick one, I would pick like Harley Reid or someone like that. He was showing a little bit of a Dusty Martin flair from time to time. I think it'll be good to have him just to fill those big, huge shoes.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting on that one. So let's jump to it. I kind of already brought it up a little bit, but we got to talk about it. Again, I am a huge supporter of the AFLW in women's footy. So I got to
Mhm.
ask, sir, do you keep track of the AFLW? And if you don't, is there something that the AFL, AFLW, and AFL House can do to get you to support the women's league?
Oh, I do. I do follow AFLW. I think the first few years there was no club for Richmond. I have watched a little bit of the AFLW footy at that time, and one or two grand finals in the early years. Now that Richmond has a team, I've been generally following. I watched a couple of matches there. Monique Conti and Katie Brandon. I think they're all like good team, but I don't think they're going to be pushing for the flag quite yet. But I do I what I see about AFLW in general is in the even in the last how long has it been? Like 8 years?
Well, there's
So
there's there's been 9 years, but there's been 10
9 years, right?
seasons because they had the one year where they played two. So technically we're going into season, I believe we're going into season 10, but they've
Yeah.
been playing for 9 years. So it's yeah, it's
It's
very interesting because of
it's
that one year where they
incredible.
actually played two in the span of a year. So
Yeah, it's incredible what it has come to, right?
mhm.
It started with even the talent. They had a lot of convert players, and even now there is some significant amount of players or really good athletes who played other sports, but and converted to playing footy. And that's one thing. This my friend whose daughter plays with Hawthorn. He was talking about. how the current crop of young, like the rookies, they all played football growing up. They
Hmm.
did not play basketball or soccer and come about. So his own daughter, she played, I think she played soccer and then just got switched to footy. I think when you see that generation come up who played football all their life, I think that's gonna make the biggest difference. And they're already here in small numbers, and you can already see that on the field and how they are naturally playing footy and all of that. And of course, it's gonna be a slightly different game than the men's game. But I think from 8 or 9 years ago to now, the game is night and day. It's
Hmm.
absolutely fantastic right now.
Hmm.
I would wish there's a couple more changes. Like why don't you play 18s? Because yeah, the field sizes are about the same. Why don't you play 18s? Why don't you play a little longer? Those things will help, I think. But otherwise, the AFLW is improving. And as the younger children grow up watching this and having their own heroes and they come up, it's only going to get better from now.
Mhm. 100% with you. I've said numerous times, I said I honestly believe I think the men and women should switch games. I think the men should be playing 16 aside with shorter quarters, and I think the women should be playing 18 aside with longer quarters, personally. But again, we won't
I,
rehash that.
I
I know many that have listened to my podcast know I've went on this diatribe far too many times, so I don't want to waste up too much
absolutely,
time. So
absolutely. I think the men get a little too crowded in there, and I can make an argument of it going down versus women. There's no reason to play 16s.
yep.
Even in the US AFL, with this is the other side of women's footy, right? I'm with the Minnesota Freeze, the current national champions, right?
Mhm.
I've been watching this team and watching this club grow over the last 10, 12 years, and they have finally gotten the top of the USAFL. And even our team, when we have enough numbers, we hate playing 16s or 14s. We would love to play a full 18-a-side football. When I say we, I'm speaking for the women's side
Mhm.
here, but I think that's the that's I'm always with you on that, Donnie.
No, 100% with you. It's gonna be interesting. It's one of the more frustrating things about AFL House because I really do. They say that they want things to happen, but then when it comes time to actually do it, sometimes they just don't, and it's very frustrating. So, like I said, I won't diatribe again. So let's jump to a little bit more fun as we kind of slowly wrap up the end of this podcast. I like kind of finding out a little bit. So I have never been to Australia. It is one of the things that's on my bucket list. So I gotta ask, have you been to Australia to see a game? And if you haven't, do you plan on doing it anytime soon?
I haven't. I wanted to do it this year. So my brother lives there. Just want to give him a visit, and also he lives in rugby league country up in northern Queensland.
Hmm.
But I also wanted to stop by either Brisbane, Melbourne, or Sydney, depending on how it all worked out. Then he had some change of plans. He's having a baby and all that. I'm just a little disappointed that I cannot make that trip right now. But I do want to go watch a game of footy in preferably at the MCG, but I think anywhere will be a fantastic experience.
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely fantastic if that were to happen. So okay, so you haven't, so it'll actually change my question just a tiny bit. So when you do go, and I'm excited, I'm interested to hear about this, is because I know that sometimes there's Aussie cuisine that I think we've all wanted to try. So when you do go, is there something down in Australia that you really want to try at a footy game?
I think everybody tells me you got to go have a meat pie and a pint, so I'm gonna just stick with that classic right there.
Hmm. And that has been the constant, which is
Yeah.
not a problem. I absolutely love it. And another thing, when you go to the footy, I'm one of those, especially with the giant ground and many seats. I think there's always a place where I think every fan wants to sit. So, where do you think will be your perfect place to sit to watch a game of footy?
I have kind of two minds on this. when I think about it. I thought about it a little bit. So when I wait, like kind of watch ice hockey, you don't want to be too close. So I would say the perfect place to watch the whole thing would be about somewhere in the midfield, a few rows up, where you can see the whole field of play. That being said, just being behind those goalposts when your team is scoring on that end, when it's that is sounds like a great time. But I don't know if you're actually able to get a seat over there. But if it is a Richmond end and that's where we're scoring, and if it's a winning goal or something like that, think about it. That's going to be a really fantastic place to sit also.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Like I said, there's so many different places, there are different levels, there's different interactions that you could possibly have, so it's always fun. So I always do this. I always end my episode with this question because I've almost started a category list of a list because some of my Australians have brought some great ones. So I'm going to ask this of you. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen? Doesn't matter if it's USAFL, AFL, doesn't matter. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen?
I have a couple of favorite games, but from IFL, I would say it is 2017 Grand Finals because, to be honest, Richmond did not go into that with a lot of confidence just because Adelaide has been so dominant that season. In fact, my friend that I talked about, Bartman, he said, "Hey, don't worry about it. You're just going there to make up the numbers. You're not going to win anything." Sure enough, that was a great game. Adelaide led at quarter time, and Richmond methodically came back and won, and that was a fantastic game to watch. In the US AFL footy, most of the games that I watched, I would say, will be our women's. In 2015, Austin, Texas, Minnesota Freeze women beat Denver. That was like about 6 years of unbeaten record for the Denver, and that was really huge when Paige kicker. She kicked a goal at the siren to win. That was a fantastic experience. And then, well, 2 years ago, when again the same women beat San Francisco in the league play, I think that was also a very fun thing to watch. And on that game, though, there was something special. I was running water that game,
Mhm.
and that is gonna make me change my answer about where do you want to watch the footy from. I want to be a water runner at a footy game because that is the best place to watch a footy game because of this women's game. I can be everywhere you want to be. You are in the midst. That's a whole nother experience. No other sport has people in the middle of the field doing things. So I thought that was really fantastic to watch.
Mhm. No, absolutely fantastic. I love that. So many different options. It's absolutely great. And I love that the connection to club is absolutely fantastic. So that is it, Isaac. That is all of my questions. Again, another fantastic chat. I love chatting with people that are just as passionate about this sport as I am. So again, I want to thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you hopping on and having a chat with me today.
Thank you, Coach Donnie. Appreciate your time. This has been real fun, and I hope see you in Des Moines sometime, eh?
Well, if you get down here for a game with the Roosters, please come over, say hi. I'd absolutely love to
Uh,
to chat in
I'll
person for sure. Absolutely cannot
I'll
wait.
be there for a curtain opener every year, the 80-35 tournament. Great tense footy. I'll be there. I'll be there to say hello as well.
I cannot wait. We will definitely catch up for sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, if you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe and keep track. Again, more of the off-season supporter series as we get closer and closer to the AFL season, along with, remember, state league footy gets going just as much with VFL, Sandful and Waffle W, Samful W, and VFLW as well. Cannot wait for that. So that's going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposal. I'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.